My name is Clara Monroe, and at 22, I was finally standing on the edge of my lifelong dream. After years of perfect grades and countless sleepless nights, I had secured an interview for the prestigious Solstice Fellowship, which would take me overseas to study global diplomacy. I had been preparing for weeks, rehearsing answers, refining my portfolio, fine-tuning every detail. But just 3 days before my flight, I discovered that my passport was missing from its usual place. A cold wave of dread swept over me as I looked up to see my sister's smirking face across the dinner table that night. I grew up in Fair Hollow, a small Michigan town where ambition rarely extended beyond state borders. My parents, Gregory and Elaine Monroe, both worked at the local auto assembly plant. Dad was a floor manager. Mom handled HR, and neither had gone to college. Early on, they seemed genuinely proud of my academic success, taping my certificates to the fridge, beaming at my perfect report cards. My fascination with international relations began in 4th grade when Miss Kingsley assigned a project on the United Nations. While other kids sighed and rushed through it, I disappeared into the library for days, emerging with a presentation so detailed that Miss Kingsley said I should consider becoming a diplomat. That was the first moment I realized this interest could become a real future one that would take me far from the borders of Fair Hollow. But then there was my older sister, Layla. 2 years ahead of me, Layla had always been the favored one in our household. She was effortlessly charming, socially magnetic, the kind of girl who never had to try to be liked. Even with her average grades and constant trouble at school, our parents adored her. While I poured myself into books and papers, Layla collected admirers and attention. As I started to gain recognition for my academic achievements, her resentment started to grow. It began with little incidents, like when I was 9 and she accidentally spilled juice on my science fair project the night before the judging. At 12, she erased my history essay from our shared computer, claiming it was a mistake. By high school, her sabotage became more deliberate. She spread rumors that I had cheated on a test, triggering an investigation that thankfully cleared my name. During my SATs, she staged a fake family emergency, calling the test center to claim our grandmother was hospitalized. I was pulled from the exam halfway through, only to come home and find her watching cartoons, saying it was all a misunderstanding. Despite all that, I held a perfect GPA, graduated as valedictorian, and earned a full scholarship to Halden University. I majored in political science, focusing on international relations, and I never looked back at Fair Hollow until now. The Solstice Fellowship was the culmination of everything I had worked toward. A fully funded graduate education at Elmsbridge University in England, international prestige, and most importantly, an ocean of distance from the toxic patterns I had grown up with. The application process had been grueling, months of essays, recommendations, current event memorization. When the acceptance email came through, inviting me to interview in person, I screamed so loud my neighbor knocked on the door. The interview was to take place at Elmsbridge itself, which made it logistically and financially challenging, but I didn't care. I picked up extra shifts at the campus cafe, sold textbooks I'd grown attached to, and charged the rest. This was my escape route. My proof that Layla had been wrong all along when she mocked my goals as delusions of grandeur. The weeks leading up to the interview blurred into preparation practice interviews, issue briefings, and my first ever real suit, a fitted navy ensemble that made me feel 10 years older. Everything was finally aligning until that morning. The morning everything began to fall apart started like any other. I woke up at 6, made strong coffee, and opened my meticulously organized checklist. Travel documents, passport, visa letter, boarding pass, accommodation confirmation. I moved through the list with the same calm precision I'd practiced for weeks, until I got to the passport. I reached into the small locked drawer where it always lived, and found nothing. The drawer was empty. I pulled it all the way out, thinking it had maybe slipped behind. Nothing. Panic started to bloom in my chest as I tore apart my entire apartment jacket pockets, laundry baskets, even the freezer. No passport. I sat on the floor, breathing heavily, trying not to spiral. I had used the passport just 2 weeks ago to verify my identity for a security clearance update. I knew I had returned it to that drawer, which meant someone had taken it. Only a few people had access to my place, my best friend Zoe, my parents, and Leela, I called Zoe first. She hadn't been over in over a month. Then I called home. Leela still lived there, unemployed and figuring things out, at 24. Mom answered the phone. Has anyone been to my apartment recently? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Leela was there last week, she said casually. She borrowed your anthropology book, said she might sign up for a course. My stomach dropped. Does she have a spare key? Of course, sweetheart. We didn't think you'd mind. She's your sister. My heart sank. Can I speak to her? Muffled voices, then Lila's bright, falsely sweet tone. What's up, baby sis? I'm missing my passport, and I need it urgently for my fellowship interview. Did you see it while you were at my apartment? A beat of silence. Why would I even notice your passport? She said with feigned confusion. I grabbed the book and left. The casual innocence in her tone hit my ears like nails on glass. Leela, if you took it, please just say so. I don't have time for games. Oh wow, okay, so now I'm stealing? You've really lost it. Maybe you just misplaced it. Stress messes with memory, you know? I ended the call and pulled up her Instagram. And there it was. A post from the day before, a smirking selfie, captioned, "Sometimes you need to delay someone else's journey to figure out your own. Sorry, not sorry. Family first." In the photo, on the table beside her, was the unmistakable corner of a blue passport. My passport. Fueled by fury, I grabbed my keys and drove straight to my parents' house. The betrayal was real. And this time, I wasn't going to be quiet about it. Leela answered the door in her pajamas, surprised but not shocked, as if she'd been expecting this moment. Well, look who's here, she said smugly, leaning against the doorframe. I want my passport, I said, pushing past her. I saw your Instagram post. This isn't funny. She followed me inside, arms crossed, tone defensive. That post was about my personal growth. God, you're so dramatic. I headed straight for her bedroom, ignoring her spin. The Solstice interview is the opportunity of a lifetime. You're sabotaging it because you're jealous. Jealous? Of what? She snapped. Of your obsession with leaving us behind? She was louder now, her voice trembling just enough to reveal something beneath the performance. Running off to England to become one of the elite while pretending we're not good enough for you. I turned to face her fully, for the first time truly seeing the depth of her resentment. This was never about thinking I'm better. It's about chasing a dream I've worked for since I was a child. Her eyes burned with something like fury. It's always about you, Clara. Every dinner, every school function, every holiday, Clara's speech. Clara's award, Clara's future. My breath caught at her words. Years of held-back tension twisted between us in the air. I didn't choose this competition, Lila. I just did the work. Maybe I did take it, she admitted with a shrug. Maybe it's the universe telling you to stay with your family instead of pretending you belong somewhere else. My heart cracked at her honesty, partial, distorted, but still real. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking. I'm calling Mom and Dad. They need to come home. Now. Lila rolled her eyes, but her posture stiffened. When Dad answered, his voice was tired. Everything okay? No, it's not. Leela stole my passport. I need you and Mom home right now. A long pause. That's a serious accusation. I'm not guessing, Dad. Please, just come home. The 30 minutes that followed were unbearable. Lila paced the living room, texting frantically while I tore apart her bedroom in search of the passport. Nothing. When the front door finally opened, Mom walked in first, her face tight with concern. Girls, what's going on? Your father had to leave work. Dad entered behind her, boots still covered in factory dust. She took my passport, I said. And I need it for my interview in 3 days. I didn't take anything, Lila said instantly, sliding into her well-worn role. Clara's spiraling. As usual, I held up my phone.
This Instagram post. Look at the corner of the table.
That's my passport. Dad squinted at the screen. That could be any notebook. Read the caption, I insisted. Delay someone's journey? That's not abstract. That's what she's doing deliberately. Mom sat beside Leela, putting an arm around her. Did you take it, honey? Tears welled in Layla's eyes, perfectly on cue. No, Mom, I swear. That post was about therapy. Dr. Carmichael says I need to stop comparing myself to Clara. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Are you serious? I asked, voice rising. You're believing this again? We're not saying we don't believe you, Dad said, tone firm but cool. We're just asking you to consider that maybe, just maybe, this isn't about the passport. The interview is in 3 days, I said, frustration boiling over. I need that document or everything I've worked for disappears.
He looked me straight in the eye. Maybe this is a sign, Clara. A sign of what?
That this ambition, it's too much. There are good opportunities here in Fair Hollow. You don't need to fly across the world. I stared at him, stunned. You think I'm overreaching? That this isn't meant for me? Mom jumped in, her voice soothing. We are proud of you, sweetheart, but maybe you're chasing something that's, I don't know, too far from home? You could teach at Fair Hollow Community College. Professor Monroe has a lovely ring to it. I almost laughed. You think this is about titles? About distance? It's about being real, Lila added. About staying grounded. Not thinking you're better than your own family. I took a deep breath, holding back the emotion burning behind my eyes. This isn't about being better. It's about being free. And maybe, I added, it's time I stop asking permission to chase what I already earned. Silence fell in the room. Years of denial and deflection hung in the air like a storm. This wasn't just about a missing passport. This was about the fact that, deep down, my own family didn't want me to fly. I left my parents' house shaking, fury and heartbreak churning in my chest like a storm I couldn't contain. I got into my car and slammed the door shut, the silence around me deafening. How had it come to this? How had the people who raised me, who hung my kindergarten awards on the fridge, become the ones standing in the way of everything I'd worked for? The betrayal cut deeper than I ever thought possible, not just from Layla, whose jealousy I had come to expect, but from the very people who were supposed to be in my corner. I drove back to my apartment in a haze, headlights blurring through tears I refused to let fall. Back inside, I double-locked the door and collapsed to the floor, the weight of it all crashing down on top of me. My breath came in shallow gasps, my body trembling. This wasn't just about a passport anymore. This was about a lifetime of being made to feel like my ambition was a threat instead of a gift. And for the first time, I let the full truth in. My family didn't support my dream. They feared it. Feared that if I succeeded, it would make their small world feel even smaller. Feared that I might never come back. And maybe, in some ways, they were right. I reached for my phone and called the Solstice Fellowship office, desperate for some sort of alternative. An interview extension. A Zoom call. Anything. The assistant who answered was kind, but firm. I'm so sorry, Miss Monroe, but the interview dates are fixed. The committee flies in from all over the world. We can't reschedule for individual cases. I pleaded, trying not to let my voice crack. I understand, but this is an emergency. My passport was stolen. Could you possibly do a video interview instead? I asked, grasping at hope. I'm afraid that would create an inequity in the process, she replied. All candidates must be assessed under the same conditions. I ended the call, crushed. I scoured the internet for emergency passport options. Even expedited services took 7 to 10 business days. I needed mine in 3. I called Professor Reynolds, my academic advisor and the one who had written my strongest recommendation letter. His voice was warm but heavy with disappointment. This is precisely why we advise students to triple-check their documents weeks in advance, he said. I didn't argue. I just listened to the space between his words, the quiet resignation. Next, I called the chair of the International Relations Department. She was sympathetic, but her advice was just as useless. Apply again next year. As if that fixed anything. As if this dream could just be put on hold like a missed appointment. Outside, the sky darkened. Inside, I lay curled on my bed, staring at the ceiling, going over every betrayal that had led to this moment. This wasn't the first time Layla had sabotaged me. In 8th grade, she spilled bleach on an essay I was about to submit to a statewide contest. In high school, she convinced her boyfriend to ask me to prom as a joke, only to have him dump me in front of everyone. During college applications, acceptance letters mysteriously disappeared. Application fees I left on my desk went missing. Each time, my parents had an excuse. She's just insecure. She didn't mean it. You know how sisters are? But this time was different. This time it was my future. My passport wasn't just a document. It was my ticket out of this town. Out of their shadow. out of a pattern that had cost me too much already. My stomach twisted in knots. My head pounded from the tension of holding it all in. I hadn't eaten since morning, but food repulsed me. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was Zoe. I almost didn't answer. I didn't think I could handle another conversation. But something in me needed a lifeline. "Clara," she said, her voice sharp with outrage. "I just got your text. What the hell?" I told her everything, voice flat, stripped of energy. "Your sister is a sociopath," she said. "And your parents? This is emotional sabotage." I couldn't argue. "I've tried everything," I said. "It's over." No, it's not." "Zoe, no, listen to me. This is not how your story ends." Something in her voice cracked through my hopelessness. "If the obvious routes don't work," she said, "we get creative. Start listing every possible option, no matter how insane it seems. I'm coming over at dawn. Bring your documents. We are going to find a way." Her certainty was foreign but contagious. She wasn't letting this die. And for the first time since the nightmare started, I felt something flicker inside me. Not hope exactly, something more primal, defiance. Lila wasn't going to win. Not this time. At exactly 7:30 the next morning, Zoe arrived at my door with a tray of coffee and a bag of hot bagels. She looked at me and raised an eyebrow. "You look like death. Drink this." I took the coffee and sank into the couch while she opened her laptop and created a fresh document titled Operation Passport Rescue. "All right," she said, already typing. "Let's start with the basics. What's the absolute fastest way to replace a stolen passport?" "I checked," I replied. "Even expedited service takes at least 5 business days. I need it in 3. "Okay, what about rescheduling the interview?" They said no. All the interviewers are flying in for just these days. No exceptions. Zoe clicked her tongue, scanning the screen rapidly. "What about a temporary travel document?" "Those are for Americans stuck abroad, not for initial international departures," I said. "Already looked into it." For hours, we bounced from one improbable idea to another. Drive to Canada? Too risky. Proxy interview? Against the rules. Borrow someone else's passport? Illegal. Each option hit a dead end. By noon, I felt the same pit of despair open back up inside me. "This isn't going to work," I said quietly. "I'm not going to make it." Zoe didn't even look up. "No, not allowed." "There's always a way, always." Then she paused, her finger frozen mid-scroll. "Wait," she whispered. "Look at this." She turned the screen toward me. A company called Velocity Passport Services. Premium passport expediting, 24-hour turnaround. They have relationships with regional agencies and send couriers in person. I stared at the page. It's probably a scam. Maybe, but look, it's accredited. Verified by the Better Business Bureau, partnered with agencies, and tons of testimonials. I scanned the reviews, trying not to get my hopes up. It looked real. It looked possible. Then we reached the pricing section. 24-hour service cost just under $2,000. My stomach dropped. I don't have that kind of money. My credit cards are maxed out from the flight and suit. Zoe was quiet for a beat. "What about crowdfunding?" "What?" "Ask your professors, classmates, the department. Start with the people who know what this means to you." "No way," I said instantly. "I'm not begging for money. I'm not airing my dirty family drama for sympathy donations." "You don't have to tell them everything," she said. "Just that your passport was stolen and you need emergency funds for the Solstice interview." I hesitated. It felt humiliating. But then I thought about what this opportunity meant, what I'd sacrificed for it. All the nights I stayed in while others went out. All the jobs I'd juggled, the tests I'd aced, the sleep I'd lost. Was I really going to let pride stop me now? How would we even do it? I asked. "We don't need a fundraiser page," she said. "We just write a heartfelt email and send it to your professors and the honors director. I'll handle logistics, you just give me names." Still unsure, I slowly nodded. Zoe was already typing. "You really think people would help?" I asked. She looked up. "Clara, do you have any idea how much people admire you? You've tutored half the department. You're the only undergrad who ever gave a keynote at the research symposium. People will help." Her words hit something tender inside me. I started drafting an email, simple, clear, direct. Explained that my passport had been stolen days before the most important interview of my life. That I needed emergency funds to replace it and get to England in time. That any support would mean the world. Zoe helped me edit, cutting the stiffness out of my academic tone. We sent the first wave of emails to the professors who knew me best, then we waited. In the meantime, we prepared, printed out all required forms, gathered my birth certificate, social security card, proof of travel, and scholarship documents. Found the nearest passport agency in Chicago, 3 hours away. Booked a backup hotel. Created a detailed schedule, down to the minute. By evening, I was exhausted but functional. Then my phone buzzed. An email from Professor Reynolds. I just sent $200 to your Venmo. This opportunity is too important. Keep me posted. 5 minutes later, Dr. Mendez. Count me in for $150. You're the department's pride. We're behind you. I looked up at Zoe in disbelief. Told you, she said, grinning. Message after message rolled in. Pledges, donations, encouragement. It wasn't just money. It was validation. It was belonging. By 10 p.m., we had over $1,600. Still short, but shockingly close. We'll get there, Zoe said. Next round goes out in the morning. I nodded, tired but moved. Then my phone rang again, an unfamiliar number. I answered, Clara, it's Aunt Miriam. Your mom's sister. I blinked, stunned. I hadn't spoken to her in years. Zoe found me on Facebook, she continued. Told me what happened. I want to help. I was speechless. I know how this feels, she said. When I was your age, I got into a cultural exchange program in France. Your grandfather hid the acceptance letter. Thought I didn't need to go so far. I gasped. I had no idea. Well, I do, and I'm sending you the rest of the money. You're not going to miss this. The cycle ends with you. Tears welled in my eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll go to Elmsbridge. Say you'll break the pattern. Say you'll live the life you've earned. I swallowed hard. I will. After the call ended, I looked at Zoe, who simply said, Told you we'd find a way. And she had. This wasn't over. Not even close. We had a passport to secure and a future to reclaim. With the funding secured, Zoe and I launched into motion like soldiers following a battle plan. At exactly 8 a.m., I called Velocity Passport Services and was connected with a specialist named Jonah. He confirmed they could expedite a replacement passport in 24 hours for the premium fee and instructed me to meet their courier at the regional agency in Chicago by 11 a.m. I relayed the plan to Zoe, who was already brewing coffee and packing snacks. Road trip to Chicago, she said. I'm driving. You look like you're one blink away from unconsciousness. She wasn't wrong. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself, pale skin, dark circles, eyes that had forgotten how to rest. Still, beneath the exhaustion was something solid, resolve. We were loading the car when my phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. Heard you found a way around your little passport problem? Resourceful. But some things aren't meant to be forced. Mom and Dad are worried. It was Leela, my hands clenched around the phone. Somehow she had found out. Zoe read the message and narrowed her eyes. She's watching your socials, she said. Maybe from your friends' posts. Do you think she'd try to sabotage me again? Absolutely. Change your locks. Right now. We called a locksmith, paid extra for rush service, and within an hour my apartment had new hardware. Zoe handed me the new keys. Now no one gets in but us. The drive to Chicago was tense but purposeful. Zoe kept us focused, reading instructions aloud, reviewing documents, keeping the energy moving. I signed the official contract with Velocity, sent the wire transfer, and answered a steady stream of texts from professors and friends offering last-minute encouragement. At one point, my phone rang with another unfamiliar number. I answered, hoping it was Jonah. Clara, it's Aunt Miriam again. Her tone was sharper now, urgent. I just got off the phone with your mother. She's furious. She knows you're getting an emergency passport. My stomach dropped. What did she say? She went on about how this fellowship will ruin the family, how it's changing you. And she said she hoped it wouldn't go through. Do you think they'll try something? I wouldn't put it past them. Be careful. Don't leave your documents unattended. And whatever you do, don't let him talk you down. Zoe and I exchanged a look. We took extra precautions, changed my email passwords, called the passport agency to authorize communication only with me, and booked a hotel under Zoe's name. We were ready for anything. When we arrived at the Chicago passport agency, Jonah met us outside the building.
He wore a navy blazer and carried a slim binder. Clara Monroe? Yes. Let's get this done.
He reviewed my paperwork, nodded approvingly, and walked us through security to the VIP counter. Because it's a stolen passport and not a first-time application, this should go quickly, he said. As we waited, I whispered to Zoe, "Is this really happening?" She squeezed my hand. Every second we're here, it gets more real. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a familiar silhouette by the entrance. I froze. Is that my dad? Zoe turned and saw him too, speaking with a security guard. How did he know we'd be here? Velocity's site lists Chicago as the nearest location. Lila must have guessed. What if he tries to stop it? He won't. Not if Jonah handles it. I texted Jonah. My father is here. Might try to interfere. Please help. His reply was instant. Stay seated. I'll take care of it. Meet me at the side exit in 5 minutes. Moments later, he reappeared and led us out through a staff door into a side alley. He claimed you weren't authorized to travel. Said you were mentally unwell and shouldn't be issued a passport, Jonah said calmly. But I showed them your documentation. You're over 18. Everything's legal. He was told to leave or be escorted out. I blinked, stunned. He said that? He's gone now. You're safe. Your application's being processed. It'll be ready tomorrow morning. That night, we checked into the hotel under Zoe's alias and barely slept. My dreams were chaotic flashes, interview rooms, smirking faces, locked doors. At exactly 8 o'clock the next morning, Jonah called. It's ready. Where shall we deliver it? 3 hours later, a courier arrived at our hotel with an envelope. Inside was my brand new passport. I held it in trembling hands, a surge of relief and emotion crashing through me. I have it, I whispered. Zoe whooped and threw her arms around me. We're not done yet. Next stop, the airport. We drove back to Fair Hollow in silence, both of us processing the last 72 hours. When we arrived at my apartment, Lila's car was parked outside. She's waiting, Zoe said. Probably wants to give one last guilt trip. I don't care, I replied. I'm not stopping. We walked straight up to the door, where Layla was sitting cross-legged on the welcome mat. She looked up, surprised, but quickly recovered. So you actually did it? Yes, I said. I leave in 4 hours, now move. She stood slowly, blocking the door. Mom and Dad are upset. Dad took time off to go find you in Chicago. They think you've changed. Because I didn't let you destroy my life. They're scared you won't come back. There it was, the fear underneath it all. Not anger, fear, but I had no sympathy left. I need my bag. She stepped aside, still trying. I just wanted to talk, explain, we're all worried about you. You should have talked before you stole my passport. Inside, I scanned the apartment, everything still where I'd left it. Zoe helped me grab my suitcase and carry on. Leela followed, still justifying. You don't get it. I'm constantly compared to you. Even now, Mom says I should enroll at the community college like you did. You're the standard, I turned, firm. I spent years dimming my light to make you feel better. I'm done. This fellowship is mine. I'm going. And you don't get to stop me. She stared at me, speechless. What should I tell Mom and Dad? She asked, voice small. Tell them I'll call from Elmsbridge, I said. Tell them I hope one day they'll be proud of me instead of afraid of me. And Layla, I hope one day you'll chase your own dreams instead of trying to destroy mine. We walked out without another word. At the airport, Zoe hugged me tight. Text me when you land. And Clara, show them who you are. As I moved through security, passport in hand, it hit me. We did it. Against everything, we made it. This was no longer just an interview. It was the beginning of a life they tried to keep from me. But it was mine now. And no one could take it away again. The transatlantic flight was the first stillness I'd had in days. As the plane leveled at cruising altitude, my body finally surrendered to exhaustion. I opened my laptop, intending to review my notes, but within minutes, sleep pulled me under. Not peaceful sleep, fragmented dreams where I showed up to the interview and couldn't speak. Or worse, where Leela sat at the table, shaking her head and denying me again. I woke as the flight attendant announced our descent into Heathrow. My neck was stiff, my head foggy, and the gravity of what lay ahead began to return. The Solstice Fellowship interview was less than 24 hours away. I gripped my new passport tightly as I navigated through Heathrow's winding terminals, every second feeling both unreal and urgent. I boarded the express train to Oxford, watching the countryside blur past as my mind raced through foreign policy frameworks and regional conflicts. Oxford itself was like a painting stone towers veiled in light rain, old buildings carrying centuries of ambition. I had booked a modest guest house near the examination schools, recommended by a former fellow. The owner, a silver-haired woman with a no-nonsense air, welcomed me with unexpected warmth. "You Americans never stop to rest," she said, eyeing my obvious fatigue. "Take tea and a nap, then go for a walk. Trust me, I've seen dozens of Solstice candidates pass through." Her pragmatism grounded me. I followed her advice, took a brief nap, then forced my stiff legs to carry me down the cobbled streets, letting the drizzle settle over my skin. The campus buildings loomed with quiet authority, their presence a whisper that I belonged here if I could only step forward. In a small cafe, I opened my folder again, reading over my talking points. Zoe's message buzzed on my screen. "Landed safely. Nervous. You've got this." Her confidence gave me strength I hadn't realized I still had. That evening, I received a short email from Professor Reynolds. "Clara, remember this. Most candidates don't face the hurdles you've already overcome. That alone speaks volumes. You've already shown the kind of resilience we want in global leaders. Trust yourself." His words settled into my chest like an anchor. I wasn't just representing myself anymore. I was carrying the belief of every person who had lifted me when my own family tried to drag me down. Sleep didn't come easily. I tossed and turned, my mind rehearsing responses to every possible question, imagining every version of failure. At 3 a.m., I gave up and turned on the desk lamp. I reviewed my papers one last time, scribbling notes in the margins. Somewhere between anxiety and determination, I drifted into sleep again. My alarm jolted me back into reality at 7 o'clock. Gray skies greeted me through the window. I dressed in my navy suit, applied concealer under my eyes, and forced down a few bites of toast. "You look the part," the guest house owner said as I left. "Now show them you can play it." The examination school stood like a fortress of thought and expectation. Other candidates waited in the lobby, some chatting nervously, others reviewing notes in silence. I found a quiet corner and focused on my breath, grounding myself. The competition was obvious: graduates from Ivy Leagues, international researchers, former interns at the UN. One woman had worked in post-war reconstruction. Another spoke fluent Mandarin and Swahili. They were all brilliant. For a moment, doubt curled around my spine. Was I truly enough? Had my struggle to even get here made me too tired, too emotionally frayed to stand beside them? Then the clipboard woman called my name. "Clara Monroe, room 4, please." I stood, straightened my blazer, and felt an unexpected calm rise in me. After everything, just being here felt like a kind of miracle. I walked into room 4 with steady steps. 5 interviewers sat in a half-circle: 2 Oxford professors, a former fellow turned development advisor, a diplomat, and the chairwoman, a historian with silver hair and piercing eyes. They greeted me politely. "Thank you for being here, Miss Monroe." I nodded. "Thank you for the opportunity." The questions started with familiar ground: my research interests, my honors thesis, my goals in the diplomatic field. I found my rhythm, passion slipping naturally into my answers. The diplomat asked about recent global trade tensions. I balanced both sides, acknowledging labor criticisms while proposing practical policy revisions. They nodded at the nuance. Then came the question I hadn't prepared for. The former fellow leaned forward. "Miss Monroe, your file suggests you've achieved quite a lot with minimal family support. Can you speak to how that's shaped your path?" The air in the room shifted. My heart thudded. I had a choice: give a polished, surface-level answer, or tell the truth. I chose truth. I come from a home where ambition, especially international ambition, was seen as disloyalty, not pride. I paused, gauging their reactions. My passport was recently taken by a family member who believed this opportunity was a rejection of where I came from. I had to secure an emergency replacement to get here. Eyebrows raised. I pressed on. It taught me that support sometimes has to be found, not given. That when traditional systems fail, community can still rise around you. It also taught me to protect my dreams fiercely. The chair leaned in. And how did you get here despite that? I smiled. Professors, classmates, and even a long-estranged aunt helped me replace my passport in 24 hours. Not because they had to, but because they believed in my potential. The panel exchanged a glance. The former fellow nodded. That kind of resourcefulness is as critical to diplomacy as any degree. Relief flushed through me. The rest of the interview returned to policy conflict mediation, cultural diplomacy, mentoring first-generation students. Then, the final question. The chair looked at me with quiet intensity. The Solstice Fellowship seeks those ready to fight the world's fight. In your eyes, what fight matters most right now? I exhaled, ready. I believe the greatest threat is the fracturing of global cooperation. In a world where crises cross borders, climate, displacement, cyber warfare, retreating into nationalism is a form of global negligence. My generation must champion a new kind of global citizenship, one rooted in collaboration without cultural erasure. I spoke with clarity, examples, urgency. And as I did, the exhaustion faded. All that remained was the conviction that I belonged here. When the interview ended, the chair shook my hand firmly. You'll hear from us within 2 weeks. Thank you, Miss Monroe. I stepped out into the drizzle of Oxford's afternoon, my heart pounding. No matter the outcome, I had already won the battle that mattered most. I had refused to stay small for anyone's comfort. The streets of Oxford shimmered in the late afternoon light as I wandered through the old colleges, the stone walls still echoing the adrenaline that surged in my blood. My steps felt lighter, but my heart remained tangled between cautious pride and looming uncertainty. The interview was over, but now came the hardest part, waiting. That evening, I allowed myself a simple celebration. A walk along the river. A cup of tea in a quiet bookstore cafe. I didn't contact my family. I didn't want to risk losing the fragile sense of accomplishment that was just beginning to take root inside me. I sent brief updates to Zoe and Professor Reynolds. Both responded within minutes. You did it, Clara. No matter what happens, you stood in that room. You fought for your place. The following morning, I boarded my flight back to the States. The trip home felt surreal, quieter than the last journey, the weight now replaced by fatigue and reflection. Landing in Detroit, I scanned the arrival area, half expecting to see my parents or Lila, but there were no familiar faces. Only Zoe, waiting just outside security, her arms open. Tell me everything, she said as we embraced. On the drive back to Fair Hollow, I replayed the interview in detail. Speaking the words aloud helped crystallize how well I'd done. They asked about my family, I said. It was unexpected, but I think I answered with honesty and strength. You did, Zoe said. You turned trauma into testimony. That's rare. Back at my apartment, I opened the drawer where my old passport had once lived. Now empty, it no longer mocked me. My new one was safe, tucked away like a secret weapon. Days passed slowly. I threw myself into my coursework, trying to lose myself in deadlines and research. The Solstice decision could come anytime within 2 weeks. Lila texted twice. First, guess you made it to the interview. Must be nice to have everyone cheering you on. Then, maybe I overreacted. I was just scared. Can we talk? I didn't respond. Her messages still centered her. No acknowledgement, no apology. Just resentment, then rewrites. My parents called once. They left a voicemail asking about Thanksgiving plans.
No mention of the interview, no mention of the passport.
As if pretending none of it happened would erase the pain, I needed space. Space to process, space to rebuild. Professor Reynolds invited me to lunch the following week. We met at a quiet cafe off campus. He looked at me with a kind of quiet pride. Whatever the committee decides, Clara, you've proven something more important than academic excellence. I looked up, curious. You've shown courage. And that's rarer than intelligence. His words stayed with me for days. The wait dragged on, but beneath the anxiety was a steadying truth. I had fought for my life. Not just my career, my independence, my right to define myself. 2 weeks after the interview, on an unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, I sat in the university library working on a paper when my phone buzzed. The subject line read, Solstice Fellowship Decision. My hands shook as I opened the email. The first line read, Dear Miss Monroe, we are pleased to inform you. I didn't need to read the rest right away. Tears welled in my eyes as I let the words settle. I had done it, despite everything. I was a Solstice Fellow. A girl from Fair Hollow whose family tried to clip her wings had just earned a place among the world's future leaders. I sat frozen, the room around me suddenly distant and quiet. Another student noticed my tears. Are you okay? I smiled through them. I just got the solstice. Her eyes widened. Oh my God, that's incredible. And then it spread. Word passed through the study tables like wildfire. I texted Zoe first. I got it. She replied in all caps, and within minutes she was in my apartment doorway, shouting and crying with joy. Next, I messaged Professor Reynolds, Aunt Miriam, and every faculty member who had donated to get me to that room. The responses were overwhelming. Pride, joy, gratitude. Each message another stitch in the community that had carried me when blood family had let me fall. Aunt Miriam sent a voice message. She was crying. You broke the chain, Clara. This is what it means to take your life back. That night, Zoe organized a small celebration at a local bistro. She invited only the people who had truly been there, friends, professors, mentors. As champagne glasses clinked, Professor Reynolds raised a toast. To Clara, for showing us that perseverance can outshine privilege, and that courage can win even against betrayal. The following morning, the university's media office reached out. They wanted to feature my story, my fellowship, my work, my plans. I agreed, still riding the wave. 2 days later, I sat under the glare of studio lights for a local morning segment. They asked about my research interests, my plans at Elmsbridge. They didn't ask about the passport or my family, and I didn't volunteer it. But the final question pierced me. What advice would you give to students chasing big dreams? I looked straight into the camera. Believe in your potential enough to fight for it. Surround yourself with people who lift you. And don't let anyone, no matter how close, convince you to stay small. That clip aired the next morning. I didn't watch it live. But my phone exploded. Friends, classmates, strangers, professors, and then inevitably my family. First my dad, he called. His voice was quieter than usual. We saw you on TV, Solstice Fellowship. That's a big deal. It is, I said, offering nothing more. We're proud of you. The words landed flat. Too late, too hollow. Thank you for calling, I said, my tone neutral. Then came Leela's text. Saw you on the news. Guess you proved your point. Still no apology, just ego. I didn't reply. And then my mother called. Sweetheart, we never meant to stop you. We were just scared of losing you. I didn't let her rewrite the narrative. You defended her after she stole my passport. Dad tried to interfere at the agency. That wasn't fear. That was sabotage. We made mistakes, she said, but we're family. We can move past this now that it worked out, right? No, because it worked out in spite of you, not because of you. And for once, I didn't soften the truth. I need space. Maybe one day things can change, but not yet. In the weeks that followed, I packed for England. I made arrangements to store my things with Zoe's family, who cheered me on more than my own ever had. I started therapy knowing the trauma I carried wouldn't vanish overnight. Some days I felt strong. Other days I grieved what I had never received, a supportive, nurturing family. But a new truth was taking hold inside me. Family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who shows up when it counts. Zoe, Aunt Miriam, my professors. They were my family now. 3 months later, I boarded a plane to England again, passport and visa secure, heart steady. This time, the flight felt different, not an escape. A return to the version of me I'd always been fighting to become. Oxford welcomed me with frost-dusted stone, golden light, and a hush that made even the sidewalks feel sacred. I moved into a shared flat with 2 other Solstice Fellows, Aisha from Kenya and Sam from New Zealand. We were strangers, but something unspoken connected us. The shared hunger for truth, for change, for something bigger than ourselves. We decorated our flat with maps, candles, and late-night coffee cups. Each of us had taken different roads to get here, but now our paths had converged. The coursework was brutal and beautiful. We debated war ethics over breakfast, drafted mock treaties in the library until 2 a.m., and challenged each other's worldviews with grace and fire. For the first time, I wasn't the outlier. I was among equals, people who didn't ask why I was driven, but why I'd waited so long to arrive. Still, my past came with me. Zoe and I scheduled regular video calls. She sent me updates from back home, always ending with, "Keep rising, you're not done yet." Professor Reynolds and Dr. Mendez checked in via email, asking about my research and offering feedback. Aunt Miriam sent care packages, granola bars, American tea, tiny notes that read, "You are the first in our line to fly. Don't land too soon." My parents stayed quiet. They sent a short email on Christmas, wishing me well, asking nothing. Leela wrote once, "I'm starting to get it. Maybe I don't know how to undo what I did, but I'm sorry, it was something. Not enough, but something." Therapy helped. My therapist, a soft-voiced woman who listened more than she spoke, helped me name things I hadn't dared say aloud. We talked about conditional love, about how excellence had become my armor, about how I'd internalized guilt every time I outshined someone, especially Leela. Week by week, I started to release that guilt. I hadn't dimmed her light. She had refused to tend it. I hadn't betrayed my roots. I had simply outgrown their pot. One night, after a late seminar, I walked alone through Radcliffe Square, the moon casting silver shadows over the ancient stones. I stood beneath the Bodleian Library, eyes closed, letting the cold fill my lungs. This was the life they tried to take from me, and I had taken it back. I remembered the morning I stood in the passport office in Chicago, heart hammering, my father trying to block my future with polite lies. And I remembered Jonah's calm voice saying, "She's an adult, she gets to decide." That line had become a mantra. I get to decide. I decided to study here, to fight for my dream, to leave when staying meant shrinking, to let go of love that came with a leash, to build a life where I was not constantly apologizing for wanting more. It didn't make me heartless. It made me whole. As spring arrived, so did opportunities. I was invited to present my research at a diplomatic roundtable in Geneva. I began mentoring first-year students, many of them, like me, from backgrounds where ambition was seen as betrayal. One night, a student named Lena stopped me after a talk. "I didn't know people like us could be here," she said. "We can," I told her, "and we should." The Solstice Fellowship had opened doors. But it wasn't the fellowship that changed me. It was what I endured to get there. The real victory wasn't the interview room. It was the moment I chose to keep going after the people I loved tried to stop me. It was the moment I realized I was allowed to exist fully, to shine without shame, to rise without waiting for permission. Back in Fair Hollow, not much had changed. My parents still lived in the same house. Leela had started taking night classes at the community college. She texted occasionally, her tone softer, her sentences unsure. I responded sparingly, still protective of my peace, still careful not to get pulled back in. Forgiveness, I had learned, doesn't always mean re-entry. It means releasing the need for repayment and choosing your own boundary lines. I wrote letters to myself, sometimes future Clara, present Clara, and the Clara who once cried on the floor beside an empty drawer. I told her, "You made it. You didn't need them to clap. You became the applause." Now, when people ask me how I got here, I smile. I tell them I had help. From friends, mentors, and a fierce woman named Zoe who refused to let me quit. And yes, from the betrayal that cracked me open wide enough to find my own strength. Oxford didn't save me. It simply reflected back the person I had already become through fire, not favor. And whenever I walk by the examination schools, I look up and whisper, "Thank you, not for choosing me, but for giving me the chance to prove I'd already chosen myself."